Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Grueling Truth. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I am waiting for what was supposed to be my new co-host, Matt Andruskavich, hasn't called in yet. I'm also waiting for our guest, Aris Persidious from Gridiron Moe, looking at talk possibly the best 5 quarterbacks to never win a Super Bowl. All right, everybody, this is The Grueling Truth with Coach Goodpaster. We had a little technical difficulties. My power went out and killed my home phone. Are you there, Aris?
I'm right here, Coach Mike. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, sorry about that. I got on here, my power went out for about 10 seconds, and I lost it here. You there? Matt, you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's what I was just getting ready to introduce you, and then my power went out for like 10 seconds, and I had to reboot my computer. That's not a good sign for the show, is it? Let's see. But I would like to introduce Matt Andruskavich. He's my new co-host. Matt's a contributing writer for Sports Rants. Matt, how you doing tonight?
Doing real good, Coach. How are you doing tonight?
All right. Now we've got a special guest tonight from Gridiron Moe. It's a man that got a hold of me about a month ago on Twitter to show me his idea for a new football app, which I think is a great idea. It's Aris Persidious. Did I get that right?
You got it right, Coach Mike. Thank you.
I was worried about that all day, Aris. But why don't you go ahead and just tell us what is... I know. I asked you like 3 times when I talked to you earlier today.
You handled it just beautifully. You did just fine.
But so go ahead and tell us what is Gridiron Moe.
Right. So I think it's important to start with a history of this. And we live in Denver, so we're Broncos fans. And you may recall that in 2012 we were dealt one of many sort of slaps in the face. It's the famous Peyton Manning taking the knee in the game against the Ravens that would decide who was going to go to the Super Bowl. And, of course, we are watching on TV, and everybody else is watching on TV, and Peyton takes the knee, and everybody's yelling, don't take the knee, just claw down the clock, do anything other than taking the knee. And, of course, he didn't, and the rest is history. And that was the genesis of the idea. It was over 2 years ago, but we did not know that embedded in our family, because what actually happened, Coach Mike, was that in our house, we're watching this, and everybody's yelling at the TV, yelling at each other, and we're all sort of calling the play, what we think should happen. And that was the birth. And about a year ago, we decided to take this seriously and invested in it and started to build it. And we managed to put it out just in time for Super Bowl and had terrific response. And glad to be here to tell you all about it.
Well, we're glad to have you. Like I said, I think it's a great idea. What makes Gridiron Moe for the casual viewer different from fantasy football games?
You know, it's interesting. We get asked that a lot. In fantasy football, I don't know about you, but I've never met anyone who's capable of playing fantasy football and is a casual fan of football. You've got to be serious about it. I mean, all of us love the game, but that love is in variations, right? So fantasy requires some serious time and, in fact, some serious money. And I don't know, I'm sure you know this, Coach Mike, but there are about 28 million people in the U.S. who play fantasy football, and they spend on average $110 per year per person. Incredible. But it does come with a requirement that you really seriously know what you're doing. And you can mess around and all that. Whereas we wanted Gridiron Moe to be something a little bit different. We wanted it to be able to be relevant to anyone who simply loves the game and watches it every now and then or all the time on TV, but doesn't have time for fantasy football necessarily and wants a different kind of engagement with the game.
Yeah. Well, see, I like the idea of the game just because I've got 12 and 14-year-old sons, And, 12 and 14-year-olds, especially boys or girls, really, once they get to that age, don't really like to hang out with their parents too much. But the one thing I do get is during football season, my two boys sit there and watch football with me all day and all night Sunday. And I think this would be a great thing to play with them, even to try to get my wife involved, because you haven't lived until you've tried to explain to my wife how and why you get 4 downs to get 10 yards. So, it's something everybody can play. And I think that's the great thing about it. Matt, you got any questions?
Well, yeah, I was as I was looking at this, I was wondering how does it when each player makes the guess, on the app, does everybody see each other's guess? What's the interface look like? Or
right.
How does it interact with each person?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So Gridiron Moe is in sync with the live football game on TV, just like when you're watching, the game. You may not be in front of the TV, and you're somewhere else, and you've got your Bleacher Reporter, your ESPN, and you've got some kind of feed on your mobile device, which is telling you play by play what's going on. So we've got the same thing with Gridiron Moe, but then we took it a step further, and on every down, you can vote what you think the offense or defense on either side of the ball should do. And we'll talk about the playbook. I know I'm in the presence of experts here and would love to sort of talk about the playbook a little bit, and I'm sure we will. So you vote what you think the offense should do, and you literally click. And you vote, if you want, what you think the defense should do, and you click. And your vote goes into this enormous database, into the back end, and it's counted against the votes of everybody else. And then what you get back is how well you guessed the fan sentiment, how everybody else is thinking the play should go. And also, obviously, how well all the fans were in agreement with you. And there's sort of very interesting, there's actual, I know you may smile at this, but there's actual science, there's geek speak behind this. It's called The Wisdom of the Crowd. And it's a very famous business book from a few years back, and it sort of inspired this idea that football fans are, when you collect them all together, are very wise. They're a very wise group. And so why don't we give them a voice? And this is what's really special about Gridiron Moe. But that's how it works.
I think
you're
that's
not
really
going to let
great
Steeler fans do it, are you? Because, Steeler fans would mess the whole thing up, probably. Go ahead, Matt.
I think what's really great about it is it does give it's something you can do with the whole family, and it basically gives you, it puts you in the position of the coach, and you get to see, everybody likes to yell at the TV when your team or the player that you like is not doing what you want them to do. Well, let's just see how good are you at guessing what might or might not happen. It really gives you an idea of, well, you're either really good at guessing or you're not.
Well, you're absolutely right, and I'm really glad. Obviously, I'm biased, of course, but I'm really glad that you mention and you see the family thing, because our aspiration here is to sort of reimagine how families engage and watch sports together. And it's not just the provenance, on Saturday and Sunday or Monday night or Thursday night of the guys sitting around and having a beer and all of that, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, of course. But there are lots of wives and spouses and kids and so on who feel left out. And wouldn't it be great if we could re-engage them and see who's going to do the dishes depending on how many points you get? There's all sorts of ways that this can happen. So we like that aspect of it a lot.
Yeah, I think when I first talked to you about this, the fact that you told me your target audience was families is where it really jumped out at me. Because if you have teenagers, they love playing video games. So this is kind of, it's my kids' two favorite things together. They can watch a football game, plus it's like playing a video game at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it's also interesting, so we assume that the person that's going to play Gridiron Moe may or may not know a lot about football. We're going to help them. So the playbook is described. So each play has a little description, and you can understand what it means to have a 4-3 defense, or what it means, what's the difference between a shotgun and a pistol, that type of thing. It's all described, and you can learn. And it's interesting. So one of the hardest things about putting Gridiron Moe together And, Coach, I know you're going to appreciate this, is how on earth do we reduce the massive offense and defense playbooks to something that you can actually sort of scan and vote on in the 10 to 15 seconds that you've got, right? It's a rather big problem. And the way we did it was to simplify. So there is no way that the playbook of Gridiron Moe will be sophisticated enough for the likes of a coach like you or somebody else who knows the inside outs of it really, really well. But what we did was we watched, obviously, like everybody else, a whole bunch of football games, and we noted what the sportscasters were talking about in terms of play. So we noted the most common plays, and we downloaded a whole bunch of playbooks, and we studied those and all that. And we went into the databases to see what were the commonest plays. So we put together about 20 offense plays and about 15 defense plays. So over 600, and we looked at about 600 to 700 offense and about 200 to 300 defense plays that eventually we reduced to this manageable size. It was a lot of fun doing it. I tell you, it's a great way to learn.
Yeah. So my question is then, if you're calling an offense, if you call a pass play, you're not calling a specific pass play. It would be like you're throwing a pass to the middle within 10 to 15 yards, or you're throwing the pass deep. Do I get that understanding right there, or is it an actual play where you get routes?
Right. So you won't necessarily have that level of detail. So you're not going to define that it's going to be a long pass, but you're going to be able to say, I want some kind of play action, or I want some kind of offense that is going to let me go deep or stay short. So you're going to have those things, and you can see all of that on the website, or you can see the playbook and all of that stuff. We have it there for folks to see and enjoy. But at the end, we had to compromise in terms of how we will describe what you do, right? I mean, there is no other way that you can do it. You have to sort of make sure that this is understandable by everyone. So for example, on offense, we will talk about your I formations, your lateral passes, your option offense, your pistol, your play action, your power plays, your screen passes, shotguns, your spread, your West Coast, even though that's rare, but a lot of people wanted to see it, wildcats, the bootlegs, quarterback sneaks, sweeps. These are the basic plays that we cover, right? So we're not going to talk about an inside slant or anything like that. That's a bit too much, and people don't have time to sort of see that. And the flip side, again, on the defense, we feel all of the basics. We've got the 8 in the box, the 4-3s and 3-4s, the blitzes, the cover 2s, nickels, so on and so forth. So the basics are there. Okay.
Now I know we promised we'd only keep you on here 15 or 20 minutes because you got to get your daughter to bed.
So my little boy.
Little boy. Sorry about that. But when is the game going to be available? I mean, is it something you can purchase now? What platforms will it be available on, and what's the cost?
Right. So it's available now. It's available now on iTunes, and we're working on the Android version of it as well. And one of the key things is, all right, so what happens in the off season? Because Gridiron Moe plays during the season, but in the off season, what? You buy it and nothing happens? Well, not quite, because in a few weeks we'll be releasing the 2-minute drill, which is a little thing we've added to Gridiron Moe, which takes all Super Bowls from Super Bowl 1 to Super Bowl 49 and puts them in a 2-minute drill question, multiple choice. So, how old was the quarterback of so-and-so in Super Bowl 3? And how much were they paid? And what was the time of possession? Where was it held? Who did the halftime show? Who sang the national anthem? So basic fun questions, but gathered for every Super Bowl. And you're going to have 2 minutes to answer as many of these as you can, and then you can play again, and you get your points, and you get to discuss with your friends who's got a better football recollection mind. And so Moe will be relevant year-round, and we're really, really excited about that. And as soon as it's done, we're going to let you guys know, obviously, because we appreciate the support. But isn't that fun?
Well, and I mean, you could even come on, and me and Matt can play each other, because this sounds like something we could download and play all day. We'd probably have to quit our jobs and everything.
I was thinking the same thing.
Well, I mean, you learn so much. It's like, and you and I were talking about this earlier. You learn so darn much. So, one of the things that we're working on now, and we're going to put out on the website, and we'll tweet about it and so on, is by doing this, we started to figure out, all right, so is there a relationship between time of possession in the Super Bowl and whether you win or lose? And it's really, really fascinating. And some of the games where you had such incredible lopsided performances, we call them the 40-20s, and you and I talked about this before. So one team has got a 40-minute time of possession, and the other guy's only got a measly 20 minutes. Well, it turns out that there were only 4 Super Bowls where that happened. And it's just really, really incredible. They haven't happened recently. It was Super Bowl 6, Super Bowl 20, 24, and 25. And since then, we've never had such a lopsided sort of performance. But it really helps you to see stuff in a different way.
Well, hey, thanks for calling in. We definitely want to have you on so you can keep us updated on the app. I mean, like I said, I think it's a great idea. I think me and Matt would love to play the app, especially when you get the Super Bowl trivia on there. Stay in contact with me. Maybe we'll talk tomorrow. You give me a call, and we'll talk about some things.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thanks for being on.
Hey, thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, I'll tell you, Matt, that's something we got to do.
Oh, no doubt. I think what's great about it is, how I've watched games with several friends at one time, and it's amazing now how you watch a game and so many people have their phones out. What a great way to engage, instead of just reading Twitter or Facebook or whatever, doing something else. You actually use your phone for as a tool to not only learn the game but actually play alongside the game.
Yeah, because I'm a Bengals fan, and when I'm watching a Bengals game, everything is negative on my Facebook and Twitter account, no matter what the score is, and I get tired of looking at that. So this would give me a chance to actually, Yeah, I mean, it's like the opening kickoff. I mean, we only run it back to the 20, and there's people, the season's over, this is done. So they're usually right, though.
Yeah.
All right, so the next topic, where I guess we'll just take off the gloves and get to the grueling truth, will be your Sports Rants article. Your first article as a contributing writer today was, go ahead and explain it to everybody, and we'll go from there.
All right. I chose the topic of the top 5 quarterbacks that did not win a championship. It's always a top 10 or a top 20 of who did or who is the best, and usually the ring is the big deciding factor as to where quarterbacks get ranked. But I decided to go with the ones that usually get left out, and it's because they don't have a championship.
So, what's your number 1 guy?
You want to go 1 to 5 or 5 to 1?
Either way you want to go. We can go 5 to 1. You go ahead and start off with number 5.
All right, number 5, I went with Wyatt Till. Chose him because one of the first 3 or 4 really great superstar quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. 2-time league MVP, had 2 really good chances to win not a Super Bowl, but an NFL championship. I remember looking at the stat books with him going 33 and 36 touchdowns and 62 and 63. That's just astronomical for that era. Very often overlooked quarterback. Had he won a championship, I think he'd be much higher on people's lists.
Yeah, I mean, Wyatt Tittle was one of the best quarterbacks at that time. I don't have him in my top 5, but I have him just outside it. My number 5 guy is Jim Kelly. 4 Super Bowls, 4 Super Bowl losses, but, I mean, he put up some big stats. He took a team that people forget. The Buffalo Bills were terrible when he got there. And he turned them around in about 2 or 3 years, but I got Jim Kelly at number 5.
All right, I got
so who's your
number 4. Well, this is, I know after all the times we've talked in the past, being a Bengal fan, for you, I know this will be tough for you, but I got Dan Fouts at number 4.
He's the most overrated quarterback that ever lived.
Yeah, we've hashed and rehashed that out. I like Dan Fouts for a few reasons. 4 years, I felt he was pretty dominant. Led one of my I love watching that Air Coryell offense. Go back and watch any of the old NFL highlights, or if you're ever able to catch, some of the footage on those teams. This was a really, really fun offense to watch. I thought Dan Fouts did a pretty good job of leading that team, scored a lot of points, racked up a lot of yardage. At the time, he was the leader for single-season yardage with like 4,800 yards. Did it 2 years in a row, 4 straight years of just pretty good dominance. He had 82 league MVP, had a passing title, and 2 teams that were real close to getting the Super Bowl, especially that 1980 team.
All right. My problem with Dan Fouts is he really only had 4 big years. My number 4 guy, I know you completely disagree with, but my number 4 guy is Randall Cunningham. I know he never won an MVP or anything, but Dan Fouts was 254 touchdowns, 242 interceptions with a passer rating of 80. If you compare that to Cunningham was 207 to 134 interceptions. He threw for 30,000 yards. He ran for 5,000, which I think is still the record or close to the record for an NFL quarterback. He had a passer rating higher than Fouts. And, his 1998 season, I think, was probably his best season. Him and Steve Young, to me, are the only 2 really running quarterbacks that actually became really good pocket passers towards the end of their career. I think he's very underrated. I think the fact that he was with Rex Ryan, who could care less, or Buddy Ryan, who could care less about the defense or about the offensive side of the ball, gave him no running game. He was basically the running game. And the other thing people forget about him was he punted the ball 40 times in his career for an average of 44.7 yards. I think he's very underrated. And my point with Cunningham is this. When you look at all the quarterbacks in this group, all the quarterbacks that ever played, maybe the toughest to prepare for was Randall Cunningham because he could beat you multiple ways.
Yeah, there's no question. He was one of my favorite players growing up. Always made an argument for just how good he really was. I think going into this list, I didn't forget about Randall Cunningham, but going into the list, I felt like my criteria was this, and maybe this is why he got left out. He's obviously in my top 10, but I basically went like this. If you didn't get at least close to a Super Bowl, if you didn't win an MVP, if you didn't win a passing title, if you don't have any real big individual statistical accolades, I had a hard time including you on my top 5. But I obviously, everything you said is right because, you didn't call him the ultimate weapon for nothing. The guy was really, really good. And, he got real close. Had Gary Anderson just made that field goal in 1998, he's in the Super Bowl. Yeah,
and it would have been a lot better Super Bowl than with the Atlanta Falcons in there.
Right. So,
next week, well, while we're live, I wanted to bring up, because we're only live for 4 minutes and 40 more seconds, and then we go to archive time, but I wanted to bring up that we'll actually have one of those 1998 Vikings on the show next week, and 2-time All-Pro guard Todd Stussy. So I'm excited about that. I know you're excited about that. And I know he's got an app coming out for the NFL draft that he wants to talk about. We'll also ask him about those teams. And I know he also played in the Super Bowl 38, I believe it was, for the Panthers against the Patriots. So we'll be on next week with Todd Stussy, so I hope everybody listens in then. So now we get to where we agree, I think, number 3.
Number three, I have one of your personal favorites of all time, Kenny Anderson.
My hero.
Kenny Anderson, I've had this conversation with people, not a lot of people, but I have a few people in my life that we like to debate top 5s and top 10. And Kenny Anderson really gets
who that is.
And well, not just one person. There's a couple. I got a couple guys that I see, but Kenny Anderson gets overlooked. And I don't really understand why. I think people are just not aware of how good he really was and how close he got to winning the Super Bowl, and for what he was able to accomplish in the era that he accomplished it. 4 passing titles, league MVP 81. Really, he was comeback player of the year in 81.
He was both in 81.
Yeah, he didn't have a lot of really eye-popping stats, but that was also because of the air he played in. But he was passing for 60 and 65%, which was just unheard of. You just didn't really do that in the 1970s. But mobile quarterback, really smart, accurate.
Kenny Anderson was a quarterback that was hated in Cincinnati. I mean, I remember being at a game when he got hurt. I think it was late 70s, maybe even 1980, where he gets hurt and everybody applauded. I mean, he was, I don't know why, other than Cincinnati fans are just like that. Most fans are just like that. But Kenny Anderson, I mean, 4 passing titles, won it back-to-back 2 different occasions, which I don't know how many guys have done that, but I know it's not too many. He was Joe Montana before Joe Montana was Joe Montana, if that makes any sense.
Exactly. That's a really good description. I would definitely agree
Only
with that.
He didn't have, Ronnie Lott in the defensive secondary. He didn't have Bill Walsh coaching him, but he should have. But that's another Bengal thing that I don't really want to bring up.
He kind of had Bill Walsh coaching him.
Well, he did for a few years, but he could have had him as the head coach, which could have changed a couple of them Super Bowls and made you not brag so much. But, I mean, Anderson's very underrated. I know he broke a record that I think stood for about 20 years after he broke it for the passing completion. I mean,
yeah,
70.2,
Drew Brees broke it
was
very recently. Yeah, Brees broke it like 2 years ago or something like that.
Oh, man, that means
nobody
1982
was touching that record
30 years ago. Don't you hate when that happens? You think of something 1982, and it's probably only like 20 years ago, and then you start thinking that's 30
still feels
years
like
ago.
20 years ago.
Yeah, and then you realize how old you are. But just remember, we're getting ready to go to the top 2. If you're listening to us live, that'll cut off at the top of the hour, and you can listen to us on the podcast, which will be available either later tonight or early in the morning. So let's go to number 2, because I know this is where our big disagreement comes.
Oh, yeah. Number 2, I've got Jim Kelly. So it's actually not too far off, because you at least have him on your list. So we both agree that he's great. I like Jim Kelly. I loved watching that no-huddle offense. I mean, like you said, the Bills were nothing when he got there. He comes in, and they did build around him with some talent. But it was really him that made that thing go with that no-huddle offense. That absolutely broke the back of so many defenses. He was tough. He's a lot tougher than people give him credit for. He bounced back from a lot of really tough hits and injuries. And to go to 4 Super Bowls when, really there were 2 of those years, those last 2, they really didn't really belong there. Those first 2, they were real dominant, especially in 1990. That was his best team. But Jim Kelly had a lot of injuries that kept him from putting up a lot of big numbers, but he just did a little of everything. Had a passing title, led the league in touchdowns in 91. But he's just one of my all-time favorite players. Going to 4 Super Bowls, come that close, that kind of clinches it for me.
Well, my problem with Jim Kelly is this. Number 1, I mean, it was great that him and Marv Levy invented the no-huddle offense after the Bengals beat him with it a year or 2 before. And then Don Shula outlawed it, but it was all right for Marv Levy, his buddy, to run it a couple of years later. But
well, don't get me wrong, he invented it.
My thing is this. The 4 Super Bowls he went to, how many times did they beat anybody even remotely very good to get to a Super Bowl? The AFC was absolutely horrible back then. The 92 Dolphins, not a very good football team. I mean, they were average. They had actually probably Dan Marino's best defense that year. You had 91. They beat Denver, but if you remember, that's a 10-7 game that John Elway got hurt in, and I'm pretty sure if John Elway gets the ball at the 50-yard line with a minute left instead of Gary Kubiak, that's entirely different. And I think in 1990, they were the better team and lost. I mean, I don't think it was on him because actually, if you look at the 4 Super Bowls, that was the one he really played well in.
That was his one game.
It was just they couldn't get the ball back from him. Yeah, the Super Bowl 26, the Redskins, he did not play well.
No.
And to get to the Super Bowl, like I said, I mean, in 90 they beat a Raiders team 51-3 that had lost Bo Jackson the week before.
Right.
So, I mean, I agree. I got him in my top 5. I just don't think he belongs that high, and I think it's an absolute crime that Kenny Anderson's not in the Hall of Fame, and that guy is.
I think both belong in the Hall of Fame. Especially, I think it's even worse that Dan Fouts is in the Hall of Fame and Kenny Anderson is not.
I can't believe I said Jim Kelly over Dan Fouts, but
I
think it's an atrocity. You got Dan Fouts in the top 5.
So does Randall Cunningham.
Now, my number two is somebody you left off. When you did your list and I read it tonight, I sat down and I just, off the top of my head, named my top 5 guys. And this guy came out at number 2 off the top of my head. And when I looked at his stats to me, he came off as number 2. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback, Warren Moon. I mean, Warren Moon, number 1 with his stats, you've got to remember, his first 6 years were in Canada, where he won 5 Grey Cups. I mean, he threw for over 49,000 yards just in the NFL. If you combine his NFL yardage with his CFL yardage, it was over 70,000 yards. And the CFL is a high quality of football. Through 291 touchdown passes, like I said, he's a Hall of Famer. His playoff record was 3-7, but his completion percentage was 65%, 17 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. I mean, if you compare him to a Fouts, Fouts, I think, won 2 playoff games, only got to the playoffs, I think, in 3 or 4 different years, where Moon got his team there 7 times, and without running the run and shoot, or if they could have run the ball a little bit in 92, I think they would have been the AFC's representative in the Super Bowl. But that's a coaching thing with Jack Pardee. But I just don't see how you can leave a Hall of Fame quarterback out of the top 5. I know you're going to bring up he never was an MVP or anything, but when you watch him play, he was a great quarterback. And, I mean, when you compare him to guys like Fouts or Kelly, I think he was a great quarterback for a longer period of time.
Yeah, he had that real long career. My problem with Warren Moon is this. I also combed through his stats. Right off the top, you go through his stats, he's got those really big yardage numbers in 90 and 91. It's 4,600 yards back-to-back, led the league in yardage. And then I think he gets a couple more 4,000-yard seasons, like 94 and 95. But other than that, I think he led the league in touchdowns in 90 with 33. But other than that, you really don't see him leading the categories in anything. Didn't really even have a passer rating above 90 for like his whole career. So you had no quarterback rating over 90, no passing titles, no MVPs. Yeah, he's got a couple of seasons where he leads the league in yardage, and a 3-7 playoff record that never sniffs the AFC Championship game. I understand what you're saying, that there could be some coaching flaws there, though maybe in a bad system, but he's in the system that he's in. He's the coach that he's with. That is what he accomplished. So all I see with Warren Moon's career, other than longevity, and I liked Warren Moon. I thought he was real good, but numbers wise, something we can quantify. I just don't see where he's got any numbers that can put him that high. I mean, he's in my top 10. I just couldn't put him in my top 5.
All right. My problem with you just said that Warren Moon only had 4 4,000-yard seasons, correct?
Well,
how many 4,000-yard seasons did Jim Kelly have?
Okay, I know where you're going with that. My point is, he didn't lead the league. He led the league in yardage twice, but that's about all he ever led the league in. Jim Kelly got a passing title. Jim Kelly led the league in touchdowns, but he was a lot more banged up than Warren Moon was. And then Jim Kelly got in the playoffs, won some more games, including the big 35. Now that wasn't Jim Kelly, but how do you go 35-3, and lose a game like that?
Well, number one, the fact that Warren Moon didn't lose that game to defense. I mean, you can't blame a quarterback for losing a game where he puts up 35 points. He has no running game. And also the fact of this, and this is my big point here, the most memorable game in that 4-year run for the Buffalo Bills, Frank Reich won the game.
Well, that's because it was the greatest comeback in history.
What's Jim Kelly's most memorable moment? Huh?
Well, the 92 AFC Championship. The 1990 AFC Championship. Those are two. You go back, just look at that whole 1990 run. He played real good.
51-3 game.
Well, in the 92 title game, goes in. That was in Miami. They go and win 29-10. That was his first game back from injury. Goes in and beats the number 1 seed. Whether or not you think Miami was really, really good,
well, Dan Marino
that's fine.
was quarterbacking him, and it was a championship game, so.
Right, exactly. And goes in there on the road and wins.
Okay. We'll agree to disagree, but I don't even think Jim Kelly belongs in the Hall of Fame. So I think Kenny Anderson belongs here before him. But
well,
then I like Warren Moon. You obviously don't, but that's all right because Warren's probably not
I
listening
like Warren
tonight,
Moon,
so
just not top 5. Yeah, it looks like we basically, if we were to take our top 8, we're pretty much in agreement just as far as where they're ranked.
Well, my guy that's missing, actually my first guy out of that list, who would have been number 6 probably, is Roman Gabriel, who most people don't remember.
I might not have had him
Pro Bowler.
He
was 69 MVP, 201 touchdowns, 149 interceptions, when not many quarterbacks that played back then had that big a differential between touchdowns and interceptions. I mean, if you look at Joe Namath, that'll tell you he's in the Hall of Fame, and his stats aren't as good as Roman Gabriel's. Roman was a 4-time Pro Bowl quarterback, 4-time Pro Bowler, and the thing that killed Roman Gabriel was the fact that he got traded to the Eagles in 1973 and played for one of the worst franchises in history in that time.
No doubt.
So now we go to number 1, where I think we both agree.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. It's got to be Dan Marino, because even Dan Marino still makes a lot of top 10 lists. Most prolific passer. Yeah, might be the best pure passer in the history of the game. 32 TDs to 24 interceptions in the playoffs. The guy never had a run game to speak of. He had to do pretty much everything by himself. Just an amazing player. It's too bad that he had to retire without a ring, but just a phenomenal quarterback.
Well, I think his best chance to get it was in 1985 when they had the Patriots at home in a championship game.
Right.
And that didn't go real well for him. I mean, it's kind of like, yeah, I don't think they would have beaten the Bears at a neutral site. I think they just I think if they'd have played the Bears 10 times that year, they'd have won one game. And I think they just have to play that night when it was the one game. I mean, if you remember, exactly. I mean, that's a game that they had passes bouncing off of defenders in the wide receiver's hands for touchdowns also.
That's
and also Jim McMahon didn't play much of that game. That was mainly Steve Fuller, I believe.
Yes, that is true.
So, yeah, I think Dan Marino is no doubt number 1 on guys that failed in their career.
Well, that's pretty good. I mean, overall, usually I would have thought we'd be clutching for each other's necks by now, but overall the lists are relatively close, but obviously some disagreement.
Well, the only problem I had was Dan Fouts instead of Warren Moon, basically. And that's just because I think Moon had a lot longer career. And also, I think a lot of NFL fans don't realize the quality of football in the Canadian Football League. I mean, a lot of guys came out of the CFL. A lot of coaches and players came out of the CFL that became big-time NFL players. I mean, Bud Grant won a Grey Cup before he got to the NFL. I mean, Warren Moon's probably the best example. And there's been guys that played in the NFL that were very successful. Vince Ferragamo in 1979 took the Rams to the Super Bowl, actually played well in that Super Bowl until he threw the pick to, I believe it was Jack Lambert. But he goes to Montreal 2 years later. After 6 games, they've cut him because he was failing miserably there. So I think that it's really underrated the fact that he went and won 5 straight Grey Cups, because the quality of play in Canada is very good. I mean, basically, the CFL, NFL difference is the players are a little bit smaller and the game's more wide open. But no NFL teams would take a chance on him because of the color of his skin, which is a shame.
Yeah, back then, that's probably true.
And the thing I look at is this. If he would have, went to the Houston Oilers in 1978, I mean, 1979 or 1980 with Warren Moon instead of Dan Pastorini or Kenny Stabler, 79 AFC Championship game could have been different. I know it's kind of a reach because he would have been a rookie or in his second year, but, I mean, come on, let's face it. Warren Moon could pass circles around Dan Pastorini.
Oh, no question. That potentially could have landed at least a Super Bowl appearance, very possibly, if Moon grows up in a hurry.
Yeah, and that team was better than the Rams. I mean, that Houston Oilers team was a great team. They just lacked a quarterback.
Right.
So, where can we follow you on Twitter?
My Twitter handle is at MTA Scavage. It's SCAVAGE at MTA Scavage.
All right. And you write for Sports Rants now?
That is correct. I'm trying to do
a
lot of historical.
You there?
Sorry about that. I try to write a lot of historical stuff, and like to keep track of definitely stuff in today's game as well.
All right. Well, we're about out of time anyways, so we will be back next Wednesday night at 11:30 with Todd Stussy, two-time Pro Bowler with the Minnesota Vikings, played in the Super Bowl with the Panthers. So if anybody wants to call in and talk to Todd, feel free. If we have any time left over, we'll probably do another top 5 or a top 10. What's your next article going to be, Matt?
Actually, I really haven't decided. You got one?
Oh. Huh? Yeah, I've got one I'm writing. My next one will be the top 10 teams that didn't win the Super Bowl. That's just so I can include the 1988 Bengals in a list. So.
No bias there.
But, yeah. But we will see everybody next Wednesday night with Todd Stussy. You got anything you got have any wisdom to impart with everybody before we get off the air?
Well, I'm just I'm kind of glad the combine's about over, getting tired of hearing about 40 times and stuff, but I'm really looking forward to getting into a lot of draft stuff and getting some projections as to who's going to go where. I do like this time of year.
Well,
so
I'm looking forward to the Dez Bryant tape to come out. Because the Dez Bryant tape will be like the Super Bowl all over again. So we'll have everybody breaking it down. It'll make Fox News lead story and everything, too, like the Ray Rice one did, I assume, so especially since he's a Cowboy. But we're out of time, so we will see you guys next Wednesday night.